Okay. Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Purple Charm Experience podcast. I am your host, Chamira E. Fleming, but you can call me Mai. This is the podcast with a purpose, and ultimately, I tend to want to motivate, aspire, and inspire you while sharing my writer's journey with you, accompanied by a fabulous sip and a little bit of Prince history. Today, for Ask the Author, I have a special guest author, Mr. Brandon Massey. He has an incredible new thriller novel called The X's, and that was just released in July. And he was born in Waukegan, Illinois. Brandon grew up in Zion, a suburb of Chicago. After self-publishing his first novel, Thunderland, in 1999, and managing to sell a few thousand copies on his own, Kensington Publishing Corporation in New York offered him a 2-book contract. Since then, he's published 3 books a year, ranging from thriller novels to short story collections. And today, I have the honor, and I'm so delighted to have him, such a prolific writer of his caliber and accomplished writer of his caliber, on my show. And so without further delay, everyone, please welcome my guest, Mr. Brandon Massey. Thanks for joining us, Brandon.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. So we just want to dive right in.
Okay.
Outside of the bio, can you tell us a little bit more about how you got started with writing, what inspires you to write?
Yeah, so I've been writing since I was about 15 years old.
Wow.
So just to do a little bit of math, about almost 35 years.
Wow.
And so I started, I think most writers, probably all writers, really start out as being avid readers. And for me, I was an avid reader from an early age. I was encouraged a lot by my mother to read. She had our house was surrounded, there were books all throughout the house.
Right.
And one of the earliest memories I have of just books in general is she, in her bedroom, she had a collection of Stephen King novels.
Wow.
That, back in the day, they used to have this special library, membership library called the Stephen King Library. So, he was so prolific back in the day that you could get a new Stephen King book like every month, every 2 months.
Right.
So she had probably about 10 or 12 of his classic books, like The Shining, The Stand, Salem's Lot, The Dead Zone, all these books. And, thick books, real books. So I just, I wasn't reading those when I was, like 5 or anything. But once I got a little bit older, like 12, 13, I started digging into those. And she was just really encouraging of just reading in general. Then also, I would say in school, I actually got some encouragement from my teachers. I was always it was just always something that interested me, writing, reading, spelling bees, nerdy stuff like that.
I feel the same way.
Yeah, so I would say around when I was about 15, that's when my family started asking me, what do you want to do for a career? What do you want to go to college for? And I said, well, I want to be a writer. And they just kind of took a step back because that was just like a foreign idea to them.
Right.
Because at that point, no one in my family had even been to college. They certainly hadn't finished college.
Right.
My grandparents are from Mississippi, sharecroppers. My granddad and grandmother had a 5th grade education. So hearing that their grandson wants to be a writer, it was like, what?
Right.
They thought it was good, but they just weren't
familiar.
They weren't familiar, and most importantly, they didn't see how that would translate into money.
Right, value.
Right. Yeah. So they could see the value of something like, why don't you just become a lawyer or a doctor, those standard career paths. But I've always been a little stubborn about things, and just when I knew that was what I wanted, I knew it was what I was good at,
Right.
and I just decided to pursue it. So I was just writing stories. I published some stories in the high school
Oh, wow.
literary magazine.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started writing my first book, Thunderland, when I was about 19 years old.
Okay.
And this was around the time where, well, even before, I would say this is around the time where you saw people self-publishing. That was starting to become a thing.
Yeah.
Um, so I wrote that book literally, and it was a supernatural horror novel, which was what I was primarily reading at
So
the
let me
time.
ask you, is
Mhm.
was Stephen King some like your major influence?
I would say Stephen
On-
King, Dean Koontz. So between the two of them,
Okay.
they're really big influences. I actually had a correspondence going on with Dean Koontz back then for several
Oh,
years. He
wow.
actually read an early draft of Thunderland and gave me like 25 pages of
That is
notes.
awesome.
It's like, so that was a really useful experience to have
Right.
someone who was so accomplished take the
Mm-hmm.
time to literally just mark up pages of the book and really just give me some very direct, useful feedback, which is hard to get when you're first starting out,
Right.
because typically you give your manuscript to somebody in your family or a friend, and they're just like, "Oh,
Mm-hmm.
it's good, it's good."
Yeah, you
They don't
can't
know
get
what
the
to
real
say,
feedback that
right?
you
They
need.
don't want to hurt your feelings.
Right.
So he didn't know me, so he felt he was just able to be really direct and honest, and that's what I needed to hear.
Right.
Um, so I got that feedback from him, and I feel like that's when I really started to learn how to write.
Mm.
This that first book was, I think it was about 700 pages in manuscript. It was just huge, just so much excess material.
Yeah.
So I cut it down to maybe around 350 pages. Still couldn't get it published though. Still was trying to get a literary
Stop it
agent.
around.
Yeah, sending it around. I did that for years. And
Wow.
then I would say when I was about 29, um, decided to self-publish because you saw at the time there were a lot of African American authors who were self-publishing, selling copies literally out the trunk of their car,
Mm-hmm.
everywhere they go, barbershop, family reunions, book club meetings. You were just kind of flinging
I mean,
books.
that was when you did it, and when you did it, it wasn't as easy as it is now.
No,
There's so
no,
many
there was
resources now.
right. Yeah, back then we were um, just kind of making it up as we went along.
Right.
You but I managed to, and back then too, Amazon wasn't nearly as big as they are
No.
now. I mean, they had just started, so you literally sold most of your books to people in person, at
Wow.
different events. So that was, that was interesting.
Now,
But I
if you
managed to.
let me ask
Mhm,
you this, if you could
mhm.
do it all over again, well, if you could do it today with the resources that they have today, would you do it today? Would you self-publish or no?
Yeah, absolutely now because um, the technology in terms of just getting the book printed is just so
Right.
much better. Like back then, you had to go pay a traditional printer
Right.
thousands of dollars. Take take use your credit card.
Yes.
Get a
Go into
couple
debt.
thousand, right? Get books printed, and then you'd have those books, boxes of books, sitting in your garage
Mm-hmm.
until you could sell them. That's why you always had books in your car because you're
Right.
like, I got to move these books. I got like 3,000 books sitting there. Can't have these books just following me everywhere.
Right.
So yeah, now it's just so much easier with ebooks. You didn't have
Mm-hmm.
there were no ebooks back then.
Right.
Everything was a printed book.
Right.
Everything. So just very, very different. But that's how I started. So I self-published Thunderland, sold
Mm-hmm.
a few thousand, um, and I was meeting other people in the industry, and that I actually struck up a friendship with Zane. You're familiar with
Oh
Zane?
my God. Are
Yeah,
you serious?
yeah, yeah. So, and she was. also self-publishing, but she had just signed a deal with
Right.
Simon and
Love
Schuster at
her
the
books.
time. And she basically, we started talking online, and she said, "Look, I have an agent. Do you want me to hook you up with my agent? Maybe
Mm-hmm.
she could, take you on and shop your book to the publisher." And I was like, "Sure, why not?" At that point,
Right.
I was basically like, I got 3,000 books in the
Yeah,
garage. I got to sell these
anything.
books, So, and I had already tried to get an agent for years, and
Mm-hmm.
it hadn't happened. So I was just focusing on,
The
uh,
writing.
yeah, that and just moving as many books as I could on my own. But she referred me to her agent, and she liked what she had read, so she said, "Okay, I'll represent you." I'm like, "Okay," and she was representing Zane. She represented Eric
That's
Jerome Hickey.
awesome.
Just a lot of other
Mm-hmm.
um, well-known authors. I would say literally within 2 months of me signing a representation deal with her, the editor at Kensington at the time was Karen Thomas,
Mm-hmm.
and she had started an imprint, an African American imprint at Kensington called Defina. They're still around,
Yes, I've heard.
and
Yep, I get their
yeah,
emails.
yeah. So and Karen was looking to, uh, like basically like looking for the Black Stephen King,
Mm-hmm.
sort of. And so they thought, well, hey, he's Black,
Yeah.
he's good at, we like his book, so they offered me a contract. And so they republished my first book, Thunderland, in 2002. And
Wow.
then from there, I
Just
just
took off.
kept putting it out. Yeah, I just kept putting it out. I came out with Dark Corner in 2004, and then, just been pretty steady ever since. So I did, I would say, about 12 books with Kensington.
Wow.
And then, that's when I'd say at the end of that period is when things really started to shift with
Mm-hmm.
bookstores, like Borders bookstore went out of business,
Mm-hmm.
and they were a huge outlet for African American authors. Like
Right.
they would sell 40 to 50%
Y-
of your books, and with them no longer there, they just left this huge
Void.
vacancy in the
Wow.
market. And that just changed things a lot with just how publishers were distributing and what they were distributing, what they were selling. And so a lot of authors, and myself included, at that time, also don't want to miss this, with the whole Amazon digital revolution really gotten
Mm-hmm.
started with the Kindle, all ebooks. So I said, you know what, I'm going to just go back to being independent.
Mm.
And it was easier the second time because I already had at least some fans,
Yeah.
who already were familiar with me. So it wasn't like I was starting out from scratch. But yeah, so I've been, like, I would say since 2010, I've been back self-publishing again.
Oh, okay.
And
That's
yeah,
awesome. That
yeah,
is
yeah,
awesome.
yeah. Occasionally I will do a book like a story a story in a collection
Mm-hmm.
that's being published by a major publisher. But for the most part, I'm not even like trying to get a deal.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not a focus because I
Yeah.
just don't think you necessarily need it anymore.
Right. Right.
So
Exactly. Because you could, I
yeah.
mean, so many people are
Hmm.
becoming overnight successes
Hmm.
and self-publishing on their own. I've heard of, because I write romance novels and or
Hmm.
books, and I've when I first started, when I wrote my first one in 2018, one of the girls that I was following, she had did this program called the Self-Publishing Formula with Mark Dawson, which is a
Yeah.
UK writer. And
Hmm.
I took that I purchased that program and followed it. And I know that this young lady, she took it and did everything exactly the way he had taught it and took off. Her career
Right.
just took off. And I'm seeing that a lot, these days.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
put in the work and
Right.
focus on the writing and you can make it work. Like it's exciting to be a writer and an
Yeah.
author
It's a
right
great
now.
time.
Yeah,
Great time.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
um I was gonna ask you, how do you come up with when so many ideas to write books? I know I get
Yeah.
writer's block sometimes, so how do you
Yeah.
stay
Uh,
creative?
so I'm always, I write, or at least think about writing pretty much every day.
Wow.
So it's just a part of my daily routine. So one of the first things I do when I get up in the morning. Um, and I literally have um, just folders just full of story ideas, like folders
Wow.
on my computer.
Mm-hmm.
The stuff um, I think just stories are everywhere. You know, I
Mm-hmm.
always will see a situation or hear about something, and then I'll just think, oh, well, what if this happened?
Yeah.
That could be a story, and I'll just jot it down. I may not write it,
But come back to it.
but I could come back to it later.
Right.
So I've done that quite a bit. I've found that a lot of my best stories come out of some type of um, like a realistic situation. You
Yep.
know, like for this book, you know, the X's. Um, what so the really the quote at the beginning of the story is when you marry someone, you marry their entire family. And that's just always been so true.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's something that oftentimes you don't realize it until you're married. I've been married for 16 years, and I we get along. I get along great with my wife's family, but I know people who don't get
Right.
along with their spouse's
Same
family.
here.
So I just thought, you know, wouldn't it be interesting to have a story about someone who is married into a family, then he gets divorced, but the family is just off. Like they're just
Yeah.
crazy. They're just crazy. What would that look like? You
Yeah.
know, and there's just that initial seed of an idea, you know, kind of became this story. So it's really, and that's just how a lot of my ideas come about is just thinking of a situation or, you know, just something that you hear all the time. Oh, yeah, you know, when you marry someone, you marry their whole family. I'm like, well, okay, how could that be a story?
Right.
How
I
could it be
love
a
how you
thriller?
flipped this one too, because you made him Austin, he's the victim. Like it's
Yeah.
usually
Mhm.
the woman that is going
Mhm.
through something like this. But I love I'm still very, I'm at the beginning of the book, but I'm loving
Mhm.
how like I can feel his anxiety of her
Yeah.
being released. I don't want to tell a story, but her getting ready to get released from prison, and like
Mhm.
I can just feel that anxiety in him from that relationship being so
Yeah.
complicated and
Right.
and and
Mhm.
stressful, and it's just a lot going on there,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's layers to this story, and that's what I
Yeah.
love.
Yeah.
It's
Thank you.
building, and you build the anticipation, like the beginning going into it. It's just like, oh gosh. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
oh, like because I love to write in a way that people can see the story.
Mhm.
I I'm reading this and it feels like a movie to me,
Mhm. Mhm.
and I'm loving that because I can visually see
Yeah.
myself watching this book
Mhm.
as a movie in my
Mhm.
mind's eye, and I love that.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're masterful at it.
Good.
So
Good. Thank you.
yeah, that kudos to you because this is
Yeah.
this is good. And I can't wait to get in the thick of it
Yeah.
because I know it's gonna get even better. So
Yeah. Crazy. More craziness.
uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and it's interesting to bring up the movie aspect because that's also something I try to do when I'm creating a story is think about, try to visualize what would this look like if it were a movie.
Hmm.
You know, how exactly would this play out if it were a movie?
Right.
And just trying to keep the storytelling visual. I think it makes it easier for people to get sucked into the story and to follow
Right.
everything that's going on. So that's something that I always try to do
Hmm.
with each book is think about sort of like we always hear show don't tell.
Right.
Um, that's what I really try to do is just how can I show that this character is a sociopath and not
Hmm.
just not just tell you she's crazy, but
Right.
actually
Right. Right.
show you somehow through her behavior, through
Hmm.
visual things that's I describe how she's um, you know, dangerous.
Right.
So, and that's something that with every story I try to find ways to do that.
Hmm.
I just think it creates a more engaging experience, you know, for the readers.
Hmm.
But,
As you say that, as you made that comment, it made me think. I recently was a guest on the Dialogue Doctor podcast with Jeff Elkins, and he gave me some feedback on a current work in progress for my fourth book that I'm working on. And one of the things he kept reiterating to me was bring me into the scene. Like, I love how you're writing the scene, you're giving me the details of the scene, but I want to hear it through the voices of these characters. Right. How do you maintain that? Because I don't know, I'm still really new to the writing game, really professionally write. I've been writing since I was a kid, but this is the real deal for me. Like first time in my life that I started self-publishing and writing books that other people are reading.
Yeah.
How do you maintain that balance of bringing the reader into the scene with you so that they can hear and read, they can read and see the scene through your characters and hear their voices as they're speaking? How do you maintain that? Because I feel like it can be difficult at times.
It's a challenge. I think it's just honestly just practicing writing a lot. I have, every morning before I start working on, work in progress, I have a series of drills that I do.
Wow.
And I kind of developed this maybe about a year ago, maybe a little less than that, because I thought, you know what, when you see like basketball players or football players, they don't just run onto the field or onto the court and start playing. They do warm ups. They do drills. In the off season, they do drills to improve their skill set. So I was just thinking, what would drills look like for a writer that could help you get better? And so I came up with, and this is the result of just studying three things that I do. Now Walter Mosley to me is the stellar author. Stellar. I've met him in person a couple of times, literally too embarrassed, too afraid to even really talk to him.
Oh no.
but it's hard because it's like I don't even know what to say because I just
It's like meeting your big time celebrity or whatnot.
But one of the things that he talks about when he gives advice to writers is you should read poetry. He says, learn how to describe things in a colorful, memorable way. He said the best way to do that is to read poetry every day. And so that's one of the things that's one of my drills is I will read a poem by a poet. Just, not a long poem, but maybe a page or so. And just to get me in that mindset of thinking visually, of thinking about how do the words sound as I'm creating, not just throwing down anything onto the page, but just thinking about how do the words sound? Does it sound? Does it flow? Does it speak? The second thing I do is I do this typing drill, just typing. There's this website called 10fastfingers.com.
Okay.
And it's basically a typing test. It goes for 1 minute. But what that does for me is it just kind of frees up my hands. Yeah. You just type in just nonsense words. You're not typing like actual coherent sentences. You're just typing. So that's helped. Part of the reason why I do that is just to get into that frame of mind of just connecting hand-eye coordination, getting warmed up. Then the third thing I've been doing is an actual writing drill where I just take a prompt, a writing prompt. It could be something like the first sentence could be something like, she looked out the window and her heart started to pound. So that's the prompt. So then the challenge, the drill is to spend the next 3 or 5 minutes writing what happens next. And you're just literally making it all up as you go along. But takes me, it gives the creative juices for me.
Right.
And I do that drill almost every day. And usually just 3 to 5 minutes. But then when I do that series of drills, I'm ready to actually write something. So it's just back to my point of just practicing. I think when we think about writing, we just think every time we sit down to write, it's got to be like this big performance and everything's got to be perfect. It's just practice. Just like, you're a Prince fan, and we've all heard about how he had, thousands and thousands of songs that have been unreleased because he's practicing. He's always recording. He's always coming up with stuff. You know? And I think as writers, that's a great approach. Is you don't have to always think about, oh, I've got to publish. It has to be perfect. It has to publish. It's got to be all over the internet and it's going to make me famous. I think that thinking like that tends to freeze you up. And you're like, oh, I can't even. That's where writer's block comes from, I think, is that you just get anxious. Oh, this idea isn't good enough. I can't write that. This scene sucks. Let me start over. Instead of just looking at it as just practice. You don't have to publish it. I have an entire manuscript that I wrote probably in 2 months. I haven't published it. Maybe I will. I don't know. But I literally almost wrote it as just a writing exercise,
Oh my gosh.
And I just think that we should do more of that. It's important to just get into
a rhythm. It gives you your rhythm.
Right. Get into the practice of writing. So really long way to answer your question, just how do you develop that skill to suck readers in? I just think it's a matter of just practicing the writing, reading a lot, reading good writers, not just reading
anything.
Anything. A balance. You read whatever it is, whatever genre or category you want to write in. You need to be familiar with that. So that.
Of course.
But then also read all types of different things. Read the so-called classic novels. Just just a wide gamut of things. For me, has been really useful because I could read something in a book that has it's not a suspense thriller at all, but maybe this author has it could be a family saga, but maybe they've got a really amazing touch with developing characters, and that could be I could get tips from that that can apply to my own stories. So I just think it's important to have a wide range of material you read. Try writing different things, but yeah, to me, ultimately, it's just about practicing. You don't have to write every day. I think sometimes people get kind of jammed up over that. Oh, I can't write every day because you got kids or a demanding job or just different things going on in your life.
You have to be intentional about it. It's important. It's important enough to for you to want to do this. You have to add it into your routine. I completely agree with you. Because one of the things I love to do, I like to meditate, turn a little music on, usually jazz or something like that, depending on what I'm writing. I noticed that certain songs just really free me up to be able to get into a rhythm or a flow to be able to write. And I like to write in the morning. That's probably my best time to write is in the morning because I'm really like an open vessel at that point. And I find that a lot of my creative thoughts come in the wee bit of the morning hours when I'm just getting up. I usually try to keep the pen and paper somewhere around me at all times because I'm constantly scribbling something down. And so I completely agree with you, but I think I'm a try out your technique with the poetry and the other two, because I think also when you talked about the typing, I feel like it gets you out of your head and allow you to relax so that you can connect your mind with the typing. So when you get ready to sit down to go, you're thinking in the story, you're in the mind of the story and not in the typing, the technical piece of you typing.
Exactly.
I love that. I love that. Did you find that it wasn't difficult during this COVID time trying to write at all? Did you find you have more emotion coming through your writing at all?
I would say when the whole pandemic first kicked off, I don't think I did a whole lot of that much writing. I actually had a book that I published March 2020, The Quiet Ones, but pretty much the book had already been done. And that's when my daughter's school basically shut down.
Oh, wow.
All the schooling became virtual. But the book was already done, already done. So I just published it. It actually sold pretty well, and a lot of the writers groups I was in, and still in, they were basically saying, "Yeah, everyone's sales are up because everybody's home."
Yeah.
And, they don't have anything else to do, so they're reading.
That's a good thing for us.
Yeah, but as far as me creatively, I don't think I finished another book until the following year. So there was a gap for me, just because of all of the uncertainty about what was going to happen. Would it get worse? Was it going to become like some apocalyptic, situation where government breaks down? You know what I'm saying?
I know, right.
It's just like, I don't know how bad is it going to get. Is it going to keep mutating, and we're all going to be
exactly? Are we all going to turn to zombies?
Right. So I didn't get a whole lot done that first year, but then, once the vaccines came out and this things got a little more normalized, I was able to get back into the groove with what I was doing. So this year I've published 2 books so far this year. One came out. Oh
my goodness, that's awesome.
One came out in January, called No Stone Unturned, and that book I pretty much wrote from middle of last year. Finished that up in December of last year. That came out this past January, and then the new book, The X's, I published that in July. So I'm back in more of a
groove. So you are you on track to release another one by the end of the year, you think?
Probably.
Okay.
I could be my own worst enemy in that regard, because I try not to repeat myself.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've done a lot of stories about families and family drama type situations. So I'm looking at maybe doing something a little different.
Okay.
But, so just trying to switch things up a little bit. But if I don't publish something by the end of the year, most likely early next year.
That's awesome. How many projects do you typically have going on at the same time?
I usually like to work on just one thing at a time, to be honest.
Really? Oh my goodness. Well, okay.
Yeah. So right now I'm actually working on a short story for a collection I've been asked to contribute to. It has to do at the end of the month, so I'm working on that. But just each book takes long. It just depends on
what the content is.
Yeah, because I like to do these really extensive outlines.
What does your outline consist of? How do you?
Usually it's a Word document. I got like a template come up with. It's about, usually they wind up being about 25 to 30 pages, single space, but it just fleshes out, what is the premise of the book, in a way that it's like what you would read on the back cover. So just kind of like a story summary, a teaser, as they call it now. So coming up with that, the characters, the main characters, the antagonist, who's, what is this villain do? Location, and then from there, just literally like scene by scene, just fleshing it out. What happens here? What are the beats of the story?
Right.
What is the this really useful book You may have heard of it, but it's called Save the Cat. Have you heard of that before?
I yes. I actually when I was speaking with Jeff Elkins, he brought that up to me.
Yeah.
He recommended it too. Oh, I'm gonna have to get that. I'm gonna have to get that.
Yeah. Yeah. It really just, it was originally can come up, the idea behind it is kind of based on Hollywood screenplays,
Mm-hmm.
but it just gives you a really simple breakdown for all the different parts of the story. Um, from the opening image of your lead character or
Mm-hmm.
characters, and what do we see them doing? What's the thing about this character that will be their internal challenge? Like maybe you have a character who's maybe they're too possessive over
Yeah.
their spouse or whatever. So you have your opening image, and then you kind of establish the setting, and then you have the catalyst. So what's the thing that really sets the story in motion? So all these beats, there's 15 story beats as described in this Save the Cat book.
Okay.
And it's stuff that it's not like the author created these things from scratch. They've been a part of stories forever, but it's just a way
tried
that
and
we
true
organize
techniques.
them. Right. It's just organize them in a way that's easy for authors to understand and to think about. You don't have to follow every single beat with every story, but it just gives you a way to really structure the story that I found really helpful. So when I devise my outlines, I'm really looking at all those different beats and thinking of, am I going to hit that beat? How will I get to that next part of the story?
Right.
But then you try to build in the plot twists, in a way that is fair to the reader. You don't just come up with something out of left field and you're just like, what the hell is that?
Right.
That doesn't make any sense. You want it to be something where they say, oh yeah, I didn't see that coming, but it makes sense. So to me, it takes time to think about all of that.
Yeah.
And I like to have at least a pretty solid plan before I sit down to actually write the book. Now, sometimes these things, as I'm actually writing the story, some of that may change. I may realize, oh, you know what? It makes more sense to have Austin do this or do that instead of what I originally thought he would do. So I'm always open to just kind of following the characters along whatever path
they take you.
They want to take me. So it's just, but an outline to me is just a roadmap. It's just like this is how I'm going to get from New York to Los Angeles. This one particular course I could follow, but there's hundreds of different ways you can get there. All that matters is that you get there,
right,
in a way that keeps the reader engaged.
Yeah.
They don't want to put the book down. They're like, oh, you want them to stay up all night, email you at 3:00 in the morning. That's just like the best feeling.
That's what I want to get to. I want to get to that place where I have readers that are doing that. So because one of the techniques that I use is, I think it's called the snowflake technique. And he goes through, I think it's like 8 or 9 different like snowflakes. And then like he makes you start off with the first box, you start off writing like take one sentence and you write about like the opening, and then the next box you go and expand that into a 2 pages on that particular character and what's going to happen. And you do that, and I think you do that for each main character in the story. And then next step, you start to bring these characters together and he just walk you through the story. I used that for my first book, and then this last one I took a different approach. I stepped away from it, came back to it, so it's a little bit different than the traditional way that I started writing the first 2 books. But I like the way this one is going because I actually used it was like a series of questions I had to ask myself about the character, and then about the characters, and then actually go through and do character development for each one of them. I use like Story Planner for that one.
Yes.
Before my first book, I used an Excel spreadsheet, and I just wrote about each one of them, right, and everything from their eye color down to their favorite lights, if they had issues, you know, little facial blemishes and things like that. I just continued that way. But this particular story, I'm really happy with the way it's coming together, and the way that I, took those questions and just asked myself, how is this going to go? Because it made it easier. Is when I sat down to write, the story's like flowing out. Just finding time for me. It's finding time to write, because of full day. I actually work during the day and have a family and everything, and so finding that time to be able to really write and just flow, get in the flow. But when I find it, it feels so good. It feels so good and gratifying. I wanted to ask, do you, before that, do you have a favorite Prince song?
Favorite Prince song? I would say, I think the song that I remember most growing up. So, I was born in 73. So Purple Rain, the movie, came out in 84. And that song, Purple Rain, made me want to know how to play a guitar.
Yes.
I actually had a toy guitar at the time that I would try to imitate what he was doing. So I would say that song made it really powerful. That's like my earliest and strongest Prince memory.
Okay, that's awesome.
But he's created so many, so much great music.
Yes. Or do you play any instruments at all?
I don't. I wish I did.
But I do too. I bought a guitar last year during the pandemic, because I told myself I was gonna start watching the Fender videos and teach myself how to play. I started, but then I put it down. Have not picked it back up, but I do have a beautiful Fender guitar. That was gonna be my kind of like my salute to Prince, to learn how to play. I wanted to learn how to play It Always Snows in April. And I have not made it there yet. It might snow in hell before I get there.
I just admire anyone who is competent with an instrument. There's just so many hours of practice that go into that. So
I think it's much like us as writers, having that cadence and that rhythm of being able to do it and do it well. And like Malcolm Gladwell, what was it? Malcolm Gladwell with the 10,000 hours.
Yes, right.
You definitely put in your 10,000 hours. So I mean, it shows when through your writing how amazing the work that you're doing. I'm just so delighted and proud to get to know you. Like, this is awesome.
Sure.
Are there is there any advice that you would give, aspiring writers, people, writers like me who, very new into this game? I know you mentioned a couple of writing groups and stuff. Are there other resources that you could recommend to, push authors along?
So I would say, definitely on Facebook, there's some really good groups. Like there's one good group, 20 books to 50K. You familiar with that one?
I came off of Facebook because it can be a little toxic.
Yeah, so I pretty much only go on the Facebook
for
these groups. I'm not like trying to look at political stuff.
Right.
Just really, and these writers, they do a really good job of moderating. So it's not like they're gonna post some something about Trump or whatever. They don't
Right.
play any of that. They shut all that down. So 20 books to 50K is a good one.
Okay.
There's one called SPF Community, just self-publishing.
Yes, I'm a part of that one.
Yeah, I like that one. So those are two good resources. They're a little more focused on the business side of writing. I honestly think just from just a writing perspective, just my own journey has been well, I did mention getting the blistering feedback from Dean.
How was that? How did you handle the feedback from your readers?
So first it was a little what he had said was I was shocked. Wow, I thought he was gonna love it.
Oh my goodness.
So but it was, you know, as I thought more about what he was saying, I could see that he was right. So I think it's important to I think the lesson there is it's important to get feedback from people who they don't need to be necessarily best-selling authors, but if they're avid readers who aren't related to you, who will be just honest with you. I think it's important to get that type of feedback. So let's just say a beta reader.
Yeah.
You hear that all the time. Oh, get some beta readers. So I think so that could be useful. I think honestly, the most important thing is just getting into a regular routine of writing and not getting kind of out of that self-critical frame of mind of that's kind of causes you to have writer's block.
Right.
Oh, I can't, this isn't good enough. Just write it. Most importantly, finish it. You know, whatever you start, try to finish it. Whether it's a story, whether it's a novel, even if you don't publish it, you'll learn just from the process of having gone from beginning to end. So, you know, we talked about Malcolm Gladwell and the 10,000 hour rule. I think for writers, I've seen it put as, you know, your first million words, you got to write 1 million words before you're good. I do think that there's some truth to that. So I'm someone I like numbers and analytics. So I have thought about, well, what would 1 million words look like every day? It's around it's like 2,800 words a day, 2,900 words a day. So so if you think about that, could you write, let's just say 3,000 words. Can you write 3,000 words a day? Yeah. Well, if you're typing fast, 40 words a minute, it's possible to do it in a year. But I think writers just need to think about producing regularly, shutting down that internal critic. Yeah. Just following a story from beginning to end. Just get into the habit of finishing things. A good friend of mine who's written a lot as well, Stephen Barnes, he talks about writing a story every week, a short story, and do that for a year. Do nothing but finish a new short story every single week. You don't have to publish it, just finish it.
Right.
You will learn so much about discipline, story structure, getting into the habit of finishing what you begin. So I think, you know, that's just really great advice. Yeah. Another thing that he says is you should read 10 times as much as you write. Right. So if you write 1,000 words a day, you should read 10,000 words a day, which is usually about 40 to 50 pages of reading. Again, I think if someone actually does that, you're gonna get better.
Absolutely.
And if you do that for 6 months, a year, you're absolutely going to get better. Right. There's no way that you wouldn't. Right. And then, you know, if you want to just start publishing your work, put it out there, you know, just publish it digitally. You know, you don't have to, like we talked about, you don't have to go print 3,000 books. Right. Just publish a Kindle version, see what people say. Yeah. What's the feedback look like?
Do you use Kindle Vella at all?
I've thought about that. I haven't gotten into that yet. Okay. Have you tried it?
I have. I have no readers going to it right now, but I do have a few stories that I've posted on Vella.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's, that's useful. If you don't want people to, if you're worried about what people think, just you can put it under a pen name. That way it's not like, your co-workers look at what you're like, man, they slamming you. Just do it anonymously. That actually happened to me.
Really?
It did. This was probably about 12 years ago. One of my last books with Kensington was Cornered, which they changed the title, which I didn't like. But anyway, so they published the book, and then Publishers Weekly published this nasty review.
I can't. They're terrible.
Yeah, they just published this nasty review, and it still sits on my Amazon book page.
Of course.
This review, even though it was like 13 years ago. And so one of my coworkers, he and I were just talking one day. He was like, "Well, what have you? What are some of your newer stuff?" So at the time, that was one of my newer books. So he pulls it up and he's like, "Man, I guess they don't like your stuff." And it's like,
don't listen to that.
Right. It's like, okay, well, if I was writing under a pen name, nobody would know.
Right.
So I think pen names can give you a little bit of cover. He's like, can you just kind of feel a little bit freer to do what you want to do?
Right.
And I haven't done a lot under pen names, but I have tried it, just to try out new things. That's what's so cool about the environment now is just try something new, a different genre, a different type of storytelling. Nobody's gonna come to your house and kidnap you. It's just a book.
Right.
Just don't be afraid to just put it out there.
Right.
And I read all my reviews. You hear some authors say, "Oh, don't pay attention to the negative reviews," but
no,
you gotta have a thick skin.
Yeah, and I think it is important to see the negative along with the positive, because the negative pushes you to focus and go harder the next time. If it isn't hitting the way you expected it to, there might be some things you might need to look at for next time.
So, I mean, some negative reviews can be helpful. Sometimes they don't say anything useful. They're just like, "Oh, it's the worst book I ever read." Like,
exactly, that's not helpful.
That doesn't help me. But then they may say something like, "He's written too many books with these types of characters," something like that. I'm like, oh, maybe is that true? Maybe I need to switch things up a little bit.
Right.
So I think you can learn from negative feedback. And we just, as writers, we need to have a thick skin. We just kind of get into our heads so much, and we feel so personally connected to all of our work that every negative comment feels like a personal attack.
It does.
It's like, damn it, who is that?
You can't talk about my baby like that.
Where does this person live?
Exactly. I spent all this time writing that story, and no one likes it but me.
We need to get away from that.
Yeah.
Put our best work out there. And, not everyone's going to like what you do. It's just the way it is, and that's fine.
Right.
That is fine.
Right.
Because if you got too many positive reviews, if like nothing but 5-star reviews, people they tend not to believe that. Like,
right.
He just got all his family and friends.
It's a bot.
He knows, right? So it just kind of spices things up a little bit.
Yeah.
So I just think so. That's another piece of advice. Just got to develop a thick skin. Don't be afraid to put your work out there.
Okay.
Not everybody's gonna love it. That's okay. You just need enough people to love it.
Right.
Be motivated to keep going. And if the bad reviews get you down, just what I do is I go read another author's. Like, well, damn, they tore him up. I feel I'm doing well by comparison.
Right. Those people can be rough. I'm telling you, those reviews can be really rough.
Yeah.
Like some people just trash some authors on those sites. I was going to ask you one of the final questions, and I want to be mindful of your time. you know, with connecting with authors like yourself, and, you know, because you've been able to connect with some really, really well-known authors and great authors to get feedback and to get, you know, encouragement and support in your writing. How do you go about, you know, establishing a writer circle, if you will, or connection with other writers, particularly those that are more senior and veteran writers, that can possibly give feedback? Would you
I
give any
think,
advice there?
yeah, I think probably the best way is to actually meet people in person.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when possible. Now it's not always possible,
Right.
but now that things are
Opening
kind of
back up.
opening back up, I think it's possible to, if you see someone in your area going to be doing a book signing
Mm-hmm.
or some other book event, go there,
Right.
meet them. Most importantly, um, if you admire them, you should be able to say, look, I've read X book by you, such and such book. This is why I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, in other words, you just come across as, this is kind of what I wish I was doing, but come across as somebody who's really thoughtful about this person's work. I think that's the first thing that they would appreciate. Um, I think I'm just trying to think about times when I felt uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I think when somebody just emails me out of the blue and they say, "Hey, love your book. Like you to read mine and edit it for me." And I'm just thinking, I don't even know you.
Know you? Like, who are you?
And at first, and I tell my wife this all the time. I'm like, why don't they just offer to pay me? You want somebody to do something, their
Right.
time is valuable. Why don't you offer to
Exactly.
pay them? Now,
Exactly.
I guarantee you, if you went up to an author of some renown and you said, "Hey, I got a book. My advanced readers have given me good feedback. I listened to what they had to say. I just want to get somebody who I think will really have some extra special insight to read this and give me their honest feedback. And I'll pay you $1,000." They will read your book.
They will.
I'm telling you.
Mhm. They will.
And yeah, because they're not used to hearing that. They're
Mm-hmm.
used to
Mm-hmm.
hearing, "Oh, just read my book because I want you to be a nice guy
Right.
and
And I'm a
send
big
up a
fan.
book." Right. But that's, if you really want to get, again, this is the kind of stuff I wish I had known
Mm-hmm.
earlier on, is go up to somebody and say, I will pay you $1,000. Now, the more well known the person is, probably the more you'd have to pay them.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but if you look at it as an investment, um,
There you go.
that's a tax write-off. You could
Yeah.
say that's editorial
Yeah.
editorial feedback. You offer some. I'm telling you, you offer somebody $1,000 to read your book and give you some notes. I think most folks would take you up on that.
I think so too.
So,
I think you're right.
so
You might have something
yeah,
there. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, um, other than that, I mean, you just got to try to kind of break through. I'm the average uninformed writer. You don't want to be that uninformed writer
Right.
emailing somebody asking them stupid questions that
Right.
you could easily look up on the internet. Like, how
Right.
do I copyright my book? Why are you asking me that?
Mm,
That's a quick Google search.
exactly. And is part of the business of writing. Like, that's stuff that you should take care of before you even
Hmm.
do anything else. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, exactly. And
101.
that's simple. That's
Yeah.
simple stuff.
Mm-hmm.
If you're gonna email somebody asking them for help, you need to come with the type of thing that you can't just easily
Right.
find out on the
Right.
internet.
Right.
So and I've helped plenty of people. Like there's a writer right now I'm working with
I was getting
where,
ready to ask you, do you
yeah,
mentor?
yeah, I've done plenty of that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just all about, for me, what impresses me is that if someone just seems serious, like, are you
Right.
serious? Have you actually finished a book?
Mm-hmm.
Not just, don't email me if you're just thinking about a book.
Right.
Finished it. You've gotten it edited. you've gotten, good feedback from your group. Just I've done that all the time. Like several times a year, I will give, whatever advice I can or whatever. Um, just because I just think it's important to just give back. It's I know how it is when you're starting out, and you may not have people around you who really understand what you're trying to do.
Right. It's difficult. When you say that, when I spoke with the dialogue doctor, Jeff Elkins, that was something that I told him as well. You know, when you a lot of times, and until you start to write and you find these groups and these pockets of like-minded writers that you can connect with. For me, like the Black Writers Collective was one that I was able to connect with. That's how I met JC Moore. And just a plethora of wonderful intentional writers on that platform, and they are phenomenal, doing great work, sharing all kinds of resources, things I did not have. Like, I would Google things and find stuff on my own, but they're constantly sharing their best practices and things that they've learned along the way. And just being in a group of people that look like me, that I can connect with, that means a lot too, because our experiences and journey is a little bit different than everyone else. It's not saying that anyone else's is you know is doesn't have value or take anything away from their journeys, but I know our experience and lived experiences and things that we connect on is a little bit different, and I can tell you something about what I'm writing and you understand exactly where I'm coming from, rather than this someone else that might not look like me. In terms of, like, case in point, my current work in progress, I'm doing a period piece that the character is coming back from the Vietnam War, and his experience being a Black man, coming back to America, how he's received fighting in that war, and yet still being treated like a second-class citizen, and racism is we're coming out of the civil rights movement and all that stuff, and how he's navigating that. I made a comment to someone about it, and they kind of this person didn't look like me. They kind of brushed off the fact that I was, there's him and another character that's a Jewish character that I'm making a connection, that they find a friendship there, and this person, I did some research about some of the Jewish professors that taught on Howard's campus during that time. And so I was trying to make some connections with this young man's family history and why he was coming to go to school at this. And so I won't tell it all, but I was trying to talk to someone that didn't look particularly like me about this, and they kind of just like glossed over it and didn't really give it any merit, or thought that it was, oh, this could be a really good story, or a really good way of talking about something that's so relevant today that was happening back then, and you're doing it in a way that's kind of fresh. He didn't see it. He didn't see what I was trying to do. And I think when I talked to JC Moore about it, she was like, oh, wow, that's gonna be great. And so, and talking to you about it, it's so different, the way we perceive things like that in a different way. So
absolutely true.
Yeah. So I won't take up too much more of your time. This has been an awesome conversation. I would love to have you on again if you have any new books coming up in the future that you want to share with me and my audience. Is there anything that you want to, share your contact information, any information about your books, how to find out more info about you?
Just check out my website, brandonmassey.com, Brandon Massey, And there's biographical information on how to get in touch with me, links to buy the books, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, wherever, whatever retailers stock them. So yeah.
Okay.
Check it out.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, guys, I just want to say thank you for joining us, Brandon. This was just insightful, very, very wonderful conversation. I feel like I got a lot of jewels and gems dropped on this episode, and I have information that I can use for my own personal writer's journey. Cool. And I really do appreciate you sharing yours with us today. So
my pleasure.
Thank guys, you so with much. That being said, it's a wrap. I'll catch you next time on the next episode of the Purple Charm Experience podcast. And once again, thank you, Brandon Massey, for joining us today.
Thank you for the opportunity. Take care.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right.